Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to GCS Running the Gauntlet Week 2, Playoff Week 2. Somewhere in there is the correct title if you put those words together. We've had a phenomenal playoff series so far, and we're back to recap another successful weekend of games. And I have some crazy guests as I live move my camera here. I'm joined by, of course, classic friend of the show, returning permanent co-host, Luyten. Luyten, how you doing?
Feeling like a crazy guest right now. I don't know.
Yeah, crazy zany guest in a guest house, by the way. Just live leaking that this guy has a whole guest house that he gets to use. Okay. And then, of course, our premier guest for this weekend, first member of AWB to make it. Some say, streets are saying, the most sane member of AWB. Promech. Promech, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. Thankful for the invitation. And I'm happy to break down these games.
That's what I like to hear. I hope we can.
I just want to know who's not saying he's the most sane member on the team.
Probably, some people might argue that June's the most sane member of the team.
Yeah, okay,
I don't know. I watched that duo or dodge, and my opinion changed.
Yeah.
There were some threats dropped.
I know it's completely irrelevant to this content piece, but I need y'all to know that clip of her threatening the bomb threats and then the Yazoo clip of Talony off the bridge are the most watched clips of GCS.
Right.
They should be.
Yeah. All right, well, without further ado, I see no reason not to just kick us off in the upper bracket rounds. So this is just a quick recap. Glue Factory does claim it in a 2-1. Poro Pounders claim it in a 2-0. And then we can jump to the lower bracket where we have Summit Admins losing, Mouth Breathers losing. Unfortunately, 8-Cylinder loses. And then the World Orders, just to kind of recap for those coming in quickly. And then we can get into our actual dive, which is... every week I give a biggest upset of the week, and this is the biggest upset of the week from my personal heart. To see Glue Factory come through on this series was quite sad. So, Luyten, how are you feeling about this game going into it?
I mean, coming into it, I've sent the image a couple of times. I thought we were cooked. I didn't think we were going to win this. I respect GT a lot, and I knew our roster isn't as strong just from a player standpoint, but also practice and roles. But with this game, personally, that was probably the best jungle game of my life. I don't think I've ever done any better than that. I had 2 deaths. One was in the double kill bot lane. One other one was me sprinting it into a Jinx. Other than that, I think I did pretty damn good.
It's fair.
I also had I had 24 KP or something. 22 out of 26 KP. That's pretty good, I think.
Can you tell us if it was...
Just gas myself up.
Was it your call for the Luyten jungle? Who called the Luyten jungle?
So we practiced both, and we had 2 scrims, one against B8, one against AWB, and we swapped a bit back and forth. Honestly, my jungle was worse in both those scrims, but Naki called for the roster that we went with, and it went pretty well, I would say. I think Funny Button played amazingly with Sigil, so it kind of makes sense. Because even if I'm better support than I am jungle, I think the synergy of Sigil and Button is really strong.
Okay.
And I think that was the main reason we went this route.
We're getting live. I did not know Funny Button and Sigil have particularly inclined a link there. Is there champion pool wise, or you're talking just personality? They seem to like each other.
I don't know about personality, but they play the most. They duo with each other, and not many
that makes sense.
others on the team really do that.
So you're saying they're the only people on your team who are friends?
Yeah, we'll go with that. I hate that Naki guy. He sucks.
Damn, just dogging him. Before I get into the anti-glaze fest, Promech, anything really stick out to you about the games here?
Yeah, I thought that the one Luyten did a great job. Even when his jungle performance wasn't necessarily better than Xiao Long in one of the games, he was still very present. It was very, very clear that Luyten was a threat in the jungle. Even if he wasn't going to hyper carry, he was going to set up the rest of his team. So I think he did a great job there. But I think that the fact that Kessler wasn't there made the game a lot easier for Naki to be able to really sort of put his imprint in the game in ways that kind of changed different outcomes for the team. I think Funny Button did a great job as well. Sidel did a great job. And Drysicle, he's a problem into tank players. I think he does great pretty much every game I see him in. So I think overall, Glue Factory, I thought going into this series was going to win it out. just because I played GT the round before, and I felt that GT had some issues that just we weren't able to exploit. But I figured that Tricycle might be able to exploit topside, and I thought that Naki into Kessler was going to be a pretty good matchup.
Yeah.
So the fact that instead he got Adam AX, I think was a big help for GF as well.
Yeah, this is where I jump in to say that both teams, of course, didn't supply their best roster. I think getting to see these two teams' best roster v best roster, I think would have been the best, like most fun matchup to commentate over and have been a part of. That said, I actually think I maintain that Glue Factory suffers less from losing Pandemonium than Group Therapy does losing Kessler. And you could see it in this game one specifically. Not to discredit you, Luyten, you did play a phenomenal jungle. Like, even on cast, I had to just openly admit this Jarvan game was very, very good. You actually knew the limits surprisingly well for a player that I don't think is a jungler. No offense. Especially because,
I mean,
you know, when we
I'm
played in
taking-
a tournament together, you only ever played the Graves jungle, and it never put up a performance like this. You know what I mean? But yeah, like you said, Drysicle had an amazing game as well, and Funny Button. We've long held the belief that Funny Button is not a downgrade if he has to play ADC. But this game was honestly kind of sad almost to watch Group Therapy, and I think I'll pan us into the second game as well, which they actually win this one, but it's like same idea. It almost felt like where Group Therapy is a team controlled by team fights. If they don't come out of lane with absolutely dominant lane pressure, like they did have this one with STL, I believe, and then Xiaolong was like 6-0 at one point, they have to fight these team fights, and they need that AP scaling control mage in the mid lane that hits their 2-item power spikes, and suddenly they're winning team fights. And if you look at like this first game, they have literally no one. They just literally, it was, I don't know, dead the whole game. Like they never had any chance. No one came online. And even in the second game where STL came out, I think he had 3 kills out of lane. And Xiaolong, like I said, was like 6-0. They were starting to get outscaled in this game. This game was not, let's cut it back, ridiculously close. Like you can see even like more towards the end, there was even a chance where y'all brought it back a bit. And I think Pandemonium being gone wasn't actually all that bad for you guys, which is kind of tough to say.
A couple of things. I think what Promech mentioned about Kessler at least also kind of discredits it, because it's not just the mid lane, how the 1v1 goes and whatnot. It's also bans. Draft becomes a lot harder with Kessler, and I think.
Yeah.
And without him, it became so much easier just having to drop a Swain in a whatever ban. Swain Victor or something else I can't remember off the top of my head. And then also, what impressed me most with my team game one was my game plan coming in was leave bot lane alone and hope they lived, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then level 3, I'm looking mid lane, and I just happen to pan bot lane, and I see a 200 HP Milio. And that's when I decided to go bot for the gank, and it was just a actually really good performance from my bot lane, and I think that made STL and Dumpling lock in a little more game 2 where they performed much better, and I think that's why it was such a drastic result, or change in result.
I agree. I think the one thing that GT generally, when they have Kessler on, has going for them is that they effectively become a 3-headed monster. Whether you have to deal with Kessler, you have to deal with Xiaolong, you have to deal with STL Slayer. So without him, it becomes a bit easier to have to deal with just the STL Slayer or deal with Xiaolong. STL had a really good game one, but effectively he was on his own, and everything else was around him. And if you get rid of him, the team kind of fell apart. This game two, STL just denied that. He was just able to stay around and actually go through, and Xiaolong was able to come along with him. But I think I really think that you guys did a really good job even in this game, because I didn't think even when GT was winning, I didn't feel that you guys were necessarily out of the game until pretty much the very end. I think you guys still had a very good opportunity to kind of come in on it.
We turned it around for a little bit and even got a Baron off of they sent Jinx bot lane, and we just forced a 4v4 top and won and got Baron from it, which was really good. But then we had a really bad Drake fight after and just kind of slowly lost the game. But we had our moments. But I think Xiaolong, this was by far Xiaolong's better game. Like, I'd have a hard time believing this was the same guy as the other two games.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, This is probably Xiaolong's worst series in the whole tournament so far.
Yeah.
Especially like hot off the he's in OTP debate, right? The Viego gets banned. He's saying his Kindred's better. Game 1, his Kindred is useless. No
Was not.
offense. He comes in on this one and he plays the Lee Sin well. You know, I won't deny it on that. But he's also like, he wins and he sets his team up to wins. But towards the later part of the game, he was certainly still falling off. And that's more of the champion than anything else. And I do, real quick, I want to give Naki a shout out this game, because this Aurora for Glue Factory was the only champion doing anything. And for some reason, there was at least 3 people in chat actually just hating, like real deal hating on Naki, saying that he was useless, like beyond useless. No flame to funny button and sigil. But when you're looking at an 0-10 bot lane and your Aurora's 5-7, I feel like you can't say Naki's the one who's useless, you know?
I don't think it's definitely not his best performance or like most comfortable champ for sure, but yeah, that's uncalled for flame for sure.
Yeah, I think it's more so an issue of the Aurora itself. Aurora, whenever we see her, she can sort of quote unquote carry these games, but when you really look at it, it's not necessarily that the Aurora itself can like 1v9. It's more so that if anyone initiates anything and Aurora gets there, she can capitalize on everything else going on. So when Aurora becomes your only character that's actually performing and doing well, it becomes very, very difficult for her to really be able to run off in these fights, just because, yeah, I can burst this person from 100% to 10%, but if my team hasn't helped me get that 10%, I can't kill that one person and everyone can kill me now.
Yeah. I think that's actually a great summary, and I think we'll see that come back up in another series. But we go to this game 3, which was admittedly, like on cast, I did not have a lot of hopes, because you look at pick ban here, right? You get rid of the Jinx melee. This is great banning from Glue Factory, in my opinion. And we somehow end up with Poppy Malphite, and Poppy was picked early. The Poppy had a lot of success the second game, but seeing the Poppy get picked early, I think you can go back and look at my commentary, and I was like, oh, the magic's not going to be there this time. I think there was one dash at the time the Poppy was picked, and it was Jace's like hammer kick. And I think the top lane had no way of playing. CC Swift never became particularly useful. And it was just, could anyone match the threat of the Mundo, who had a perfect lane? This Poppy couldn't do anything to it. And so while you won distinctly around the map, I remember everyone in draft just saying, like, this game is on a timer. Eventually Mundo will just be unkillable. Does not matter how good STL does. If they don't win 15 plates Siege, it's game over. And you guys held, not only held, but also just won. And I don't know, man. I was doomer posting for GT despite being a GT believer.
Yeah. One of the things we noted in the series was AdamX was actually doing pretty well on the Galio, we thought. So we figured we would early draft an AD champ for Naki to kind of force him off it. And I think the Malphite was definitely, like, I think they overforced a little bit with the Poppy and the Malphite. I think the Malphite was kind of a panic pick. From my understanding, they were talking about sitting the Poppy mid, I believe. Can't remember the exact details. I talked to AdamX about it a little bit. But like you said, drafting the Poppy early just so it doesn't get banned when there isn't really any dashes and stuff. And I read the chat a little bit too, and it seems like it was a little controversial on our draft if it was good or not. I think it's really good. Yeah, our MF Lulu has 0 synergy, but we just wanted to take away the Lulu, and then we planned for MF to counter the Ziggs support that we knew would probably have a high chance of coming. You rush BT, and then you don't care about poke. And we only lost like 7 tower plates because of that, which isn't great. But we did our job, you know. Button was also an absolute psychopath this game. He flashed in like 5 different times. If they worked or not, up to debate, but like you got to respect the confidence at least. It was pretty great. But yeah, the big thing too was I had an awful Zyra performance, but it didn't matter. I just pressed R, and then their backline and frontline were separated, and we got to kill their frontline for free.
It's just the most perfect description of the entire game.
Yeah. I swear it happened like 3 different times. I just pressed R, and then frontline's alone.
It's
like,
also an insane amount of damage from Zyra. Like, at all points, maybe it's because they have their only damage was Ziggs Caitlyn, and so Zyra ult's always going to chunk them, but
6 damage was crazy this game. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't even like once I got out of the game, I didn't even realize he did that well. He also didn't die both of the last 2 games. I think he had 4 deaths in the first game. So he was probably the best performing member on the team, I would say. Definitely.
For sure.
So kudos to him on that. But I think draft was just cooked for them, and Xiaolong had another rough game.
Yeah, I feel like if I'm not mistaken, I guess there's no way to check, but I feel like the Vi was either 4th or 5th pick, right, for GT.
Yeah, because it was Kate, Ziggs, Poppy, so it was R4.
Yeah.
So we got 2 more bans on him, I assume. If we go back to the other.
It looks like you throw it. Yeah, the Hecker and Lee Sin. Yeah. And supposedly, according to chat, which I think Xiaolong had his friends come watch him in this series, by the way. Like, these were the people avidly defending him. Vi is, like, supposed to be one of his better champions, and it felt like...
It's hard in comp.
Yeah, all the kills he got were, like... And they weren't KS'd because no one could kill them, but he never, like, brawled with any of your squishies to get the kill. He just found himself into it. And meanwhile, like, in Counterance, that is a carry jungler trying his best. I actually don't think you did that bad this game. You played your role, which was press R on the carries, and they would take 75% of their HP bar. Like, how do you counterplay that?
I just had a couple of bad moments. I had a really bad clear because I reset my wolf camp, and it lost me like 30 seconds on my clear time. I also lost red buff to a 20 HP smite because I was greeting it, and then I died. You didn't see all of it on game or on the cast, but it happened. It was rough. And then I had a really bad Zanya's later as well. So there's a couple instances, but I think Naki carried this game, and I think our draft put him in a really good position. Just having a poke champ against a Kate Ziggs is so good if you can outrange them.
Yeah. And then, of course, Promech, how do you feel about seeing Drysickle, not a Darius merchant? He locks the Mundo and goes 5-2 and 10.
Well, I think the Mundo, number one, right, when CC Swift kills the Mundo in that first time of their fight, I think it's like first blood, right? I was not surprised by that because Poppy has a lot of front-loaded damage, particularly early. And against something like a Mundo, when you have to land your cleaver and she can walk between minions and block it and all that, but she can just press Q and you're a melee champion and you're going to take both hits of the Q, she has that damage potential early. I think more so, I think Drysickle did a great job, and I agree that the Mundo is essentially this time that you have to stop. I think the Vi pick is just a flat-out mistake, because when you have 2 tanks in your solo lanes, the only person that's going to help Vi secure any kills is now your bot lane. And bot lane at no point was going to stay in their lane. Like, I think they got a super early tower. Like, they were just going to push, be able to rotate around, and it just felt like GT's draft was just a little bit discombobulated in how they were going to actually be able to win the game. And on the other side, like, GF's draft, number one, Mundo's going to do whatever he wants. The only way you stop him is if you can knock his shield out and Poppy can ult him away. But even if you do that, then you have Luyten ult, you have Lulu that's going to make anyone tanky, you have Misfortune ult, you have like so many tools on GF's side that's going to essentially play the team fight well, that on GT's side, I don't see how realistically you're going to be able to guarantee fights, because there's just so many tools on GF's side. But yeah, no, Drysickle did a great job on Mundo. I think Mundo is in the same category as the Darius, though, in the sense that he's the type of champion that if you pick him and you're an aggressive or a bruiser type of player, that's a tank that plays a lot like a bruiser.
Chat, you heard it here first. Promech just said Mundo is Darius. All my top laners.
No, in the same category.
All the top laners in the YouTube chat on this, Promech, I hope you watch it live, are going to be like, what the fuck is he talking about?
No,
there's no shot.
I think that Mundo, Sion, I think the Juggernaut group, Mundo isn't in that group, but he should be, essentially, is what I'm getting at. I think that the Mundo playstyle is very much like a Juggernaut, particularly with how you're trading in lane, with how you're playing your life pretty much the entire laning to then use your ult later on. So while he builds tank, I think he's more in line with the Darius, more in line with the Cassante, for example, that I don't think is necessarily a traditional tank. The way it's just you play it is a little more aggressive.
Yeah.
versus like an Ornn, for example. An Ornn can do damage, but the Ornn isn't looking necessarily to just walk up and auto every time he gets a chance or poke you out. He's looking for, oh, you misstepped, I can engage on that.
Okay, well, watch this. Leave a like if you agree with VLN, and leave a comment if you agree with Promech. And then we'll look at the likes to comment ratio.
Likes are a lot easier. Just
as we
comment
move
which
to
of them was you agree with.
this second series, which is Poro Pounders versus Nova Chrysalis, which is, of course, the Crash Out series. I believe we got to see what a lot of people said was...
It wasn't happening at the start, supposedly.
I think they came in with hope. From the people I've talked to, I think we get to see the weakness that a lot of people thought was going to come out a lot sooner with Nova Chrysalis actually show its head here today. Which I'm going to say it straight. The Caitlyn ban, I get. But I feel like the Ornn and Yi here, I was surprised with. Because Peter's going to play a lot of things. I'll go ahead. This is my really only take about this game. Is like, it felt like Peter was going to play a bunch of non-committal things. And I feel like if you get him on the Ornn, like, I don't know. You don't want to give one tricks, but I feel like if you're going to ban him off the Ornn, you have to think about what champs he's going to play. And I don't know if Cho'Gath versus Alawi is Cho'Gath sided, but he made it look Cho'Gath sided in this game.
Yeah.
And then also, I'm always surprised when high-elo teams ban a Master Yi, because isn't he like the low elo pub stomp character? If you just draft hard CC, he loses, right?
Not anymore.
Oh, never mind.
So essentially, this is actually something that a bunch of the Master Yi players are actually asking Riot to fix. So Master Yi before used to be a pub stomp, but his Q used to be scaling more on crit than it did on hits. So they changed that out and made it so that his Q is now more on hit focused, and then that actually skews his player base so that high skilled players that are building on hit and are able to really play around that play style are more successful with it than low elo players.
Okay, never mind. Then I actually just take back what I was gonna say. I guess then it makes sense to ban the Yi, and if you just don't want an Ornn in the game, that's fine. But when I always see like a good player on an Ornn, I'm like, they're playing a neutral lane, right? And I feel like Banana on the Alawi or the Yorick, which they chose to let the Alawi gets through, can take a neutral lane and turn it into a win. I didn't feel like you had to give away the ban to the Ornn every time. But it's just me and a top laner. Finally have a top laner on the show for us to talk about the best role in the game.
I agree with you, and particularly if Banana's going to play the Alawi, the Ornn is probably the better matchup than the Cho'Gath, because while the Ornn is more disruptive in team fights, you're Alawi, and if, for example, his ult is coming at you, you ult, you don't get knocked up by it, you continue to do your damage as normal. Like, I think Alawi has a much easier time against the Ornn than it does against Cho'Gath. But if Peter Griefer is that good on Ornn, then I don't know. I don't think it's wrong to err on the side of caution against one tricks.
Well, it's just to me that, like, I don't think his Ornn, no offense, Peter, if you're watching this, is ever more valuable than putting any ban on Levi, right? Like, the Mel gets through on this game and is absolutely crazy. I think I jumped back to check. They only give him one ban, and it's Rumble at the very end. And I get banning a Grandmaster support. He's going to play what he wants and like at a high level. But when you watch back his games, his Mel, his Xerath, his Rumble, are Pixies picking and just beating the shit out of people in the bot lane. And for him to get no attention as arguably the best player on his team felt like a huge draft oversight from Nova Chrysalis, in my opinion.
Wait, despite that, I think the bot lane of NS did pretty okay for a while. At least early game, if I remember right, they kind of collapsed later. Not the easiest Twitch game, to be fair. I think it's pretty hard. But I think that kind of gives you hope as NS that if you draft a little better here and there, maybe the bot lane goes in their favor, and that would probably get them ahead on the map in the game, but didn't quite work out, I'd say.
Yeah, how is the Twitch matchup into Jinx? Jinx is just so strong right now that it's effectively all
this
matchups are set.
Purely a support matchup at this point. Like,
yeah,
both ADCs can do the damage, but like,
well, to me, when I saw it locked, it felt like the Twitch was like, I almost imagined Biomatrix was just gonna leave and not actually try to play for bot lane. Like, you know, you go you go invisible, you show up early to an objective, you sneak a quick kill or something like that. And that's more so what I mean about the matchup. If that's how it's supposed to be played, or if you're meant to go ban for ban in lane.
In lane, I think it's kind of just whatever. But yeah, later in the game, you can outrange the Jinx with ult and just assassinate her and threaten her by just being invis or off map. So that's where it gets its strength. It's a good pick, but the rest of the team makes it pretty hard. If you go out of invis and immediately get Syndra stunned, what do you do?
Yeah.
Syndra, Cho'Gath Q, knock up from Wukong. Like, there's a lot of sort of, it's Twitch here, and suddenly go in on him.
I don't know how Twitch ult works with Mel W either, because I think it technically counts as a projectile.
That
might be really bad.
I do think it does count as a projectile because it has the physical object, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if he just one shots himself, then yeah, maybe not a good pick. I don't know. But I don't remember seeing that. So
that's another huge draft oversight. I'm pretty sure the Seraphine gets picked before the Mel, but also, Levi plays Mel support. He plays it very, very well. And you're drafting Seraphine, leaving Mel open. Like, I think they did no homework going into this game. And I still think Billy played well on his best champion. I do want that said. But I think when you look at a game that you kind of feel like you're getting stomped, even though you have winning. Like, I think Billy does good. I think, like you said, the bot lane does good. But then you look at Peter Griefer, and you look at the fact that your diamond mid laner can't beat a platinum mid laner. You just, like, crash out from the game, right?
Is Peter plat? Or
no,
just
Giraffe Rider.
Giraffe Rider is.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Peter, I think he's Masters, no?
Yeah, if he's not Masters right now, he has peaked Masters this season.
Yeah. Okay. I was a little confused there.
Yeah, I meant Giraffe Rider. He probably is. I said on stream that I think Peter Griefer was the MVP of this series. I actually think Leo Giraffe Rider is. He has played a phenomenal stall mid lane in every game he's been in.
I think he's the starting mid from here on out, most likely. So
yeah. After the Slave Knight Cause incident, but they take this into game 2, actively crashing out, and look at the goal graph in game 1. It's playable. You certainly lose, but it's playable. They start crashing out. Game 2, no blue on the chart, guys. Yeah. No blue on the chart.
This game was rough to watch.
Again, no bans dedicated to Levi on that team until literally the last ban, which is just ridiculous in my opinion.
Well, the problem is that I don't think you can, I don't think throwing bans at Levi is ever a winning game plan because he's too good. He has too many options. Plus, different is really, really good, right? So, for example, let's say I can ban every one of Levi's champions, right? He can pull out literally any support that is just like a carry support, like a Lulu, like a Soraka, whatever, and Different might still just win the lane by himself, right? So, because I think Different is that kind of player where he could, if he needed to, just decide, okay, I'm going to play this lane to win. Jungle come down, we're going to do this, right? He doesn't necessarily need it, but he could do that at any point. So I don't necessarily think that getting rid of Levi's stuff is the chance to win, because I think for bot lane, you're best hoping that your team just evens out, right? And I think trying to win another lane by banning other stuff on the other side of the map is probably a better strategy into Poro Panthers, because they have a lot of tools down there specifically that I don't think bans down there are necessarily great outside of stuff like a Jinx, but that's only because of the fact that she can carry team fights, right?
Yeah, she's just that strong right now.
Yeah.
I do think that's fair. I just more so focus on the idea that the game is so support jungle focused, not this any series, any game, and it always feels weird to not at least try to put out some control, especially if you're not winning where the control you're already putting out is, right?
Yeah.
If the Ornn ban actually makes your top lane matchup worse, or the Master Yi ban lets Rambo here play setup to even further enable the carries as opposed to trying to be a carry. I'm surprised to see they didn't change anything, I guess is what I should say.
Yeah.
And then you look at this game and they didn't change anything, and it was a worse loss around the map.
To their credit, I think part of this is their support counter is Nautilus into Brand, which I feel like it can work. Engage into poke essentially makes sense, but you just got to full send it early. But then they lose 1 for 2 early on, I believe. I think different gets a double kill.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
it's just kind of over from there. Once that lane falls behind, this game is cooked. Maybe I would have liked to see something different. Maybe it's hard to say. Because matching range could have gotten them better scaling, but they have an Ashe, so you're not really looking to scale. So they just had to win that early 2v2 realistically.
But it's why do you?
From a draft, it isn't the worst idea. And I think they went red, which is a good enough change for support counter. But yeah,
Is
maybe
Lilia the champion you
more
want
speeded.
for that though? I.e., if their logic is okay, we're gonna go in with the Nautilus pick. Wouldn't you want the jungler that can just full send bot lane?
Yeah.
That probably would have helped as well. To be fair, I think Lily is an early pick, but so is the Ashe probably. So
Yeah, I believe
you have to play to bot side if you're picking Ashe.
I believe that those three were, or excuse me, those two were in the first three, and I do think like if you're playing for the double kill early with this bot lane specifically, Biometrics and Gourmet Cookies versus Different and Levi, you have to play with the jungler because your team's like the elo discrepancy in this bot lane has to mean something. Like you can't just force out the same tricks that you would use against like you and Pandemonium, right? Like I feel like you have to be a bit more coordinated given the level of play you're against.
I mean, it's easy to say elo difference every time you see Different and Levi, but this isn't a massive gap compared to the normal. It's a Diamond and Master ADC support bot lane. So like the ability is there. And if you're not winning on the other side of the map, you gotta go for it, you know?
Yeah. But both of these ADCs suck because they didn't buy BF Sword on the first back. They actually are ass at the game.
Yeah, these guys suck. Why are we buying a 600 gold attack speed item? Jeez.
Yeah, you know about this, Promech? You know about these guys not buying BF Sword on the first back?
I saw it and you mentioned it. You seem kind of confused as to where's one, but my understanding is that you effectively, if you can buy BF Sword when you back, then you want to go Unital. But if you can't buy BF Sword, then you kind of want to go Collector and call it a day because you can build into Dirk. And it's kind of a better power struggle. When you go into the Slingshot, I think you're just kind of trolling.
Yeah,
unless,
I agree with that.
For example, the only exception that I make there is if you're playing Caitlyn and the enemy team has tanks, you're kind of screwed. You kind of have to build into Unital because effectively you're going to need the attack speed to melt through them because Collector eventually is not going to be cost efficient. You're better off just instead of Collector building the Last Whisper item.
Yeah.
So
this is.
But outside of that,
I don't think the Jinx can go Collector here. Maybe they could have gone Kraken if the base is a little better. But Different just didn't have the balls or the foresight to not start Dorns. So
yeah, this is where I tell you this is actually a rage bait, Promech that I'm pretty sure I used it against.
He ruined
Luyten.
it.
Yeah, where he
ruined it.
I just saw that he built a slingshot and I was like, isn't that the worst item to first build? And Luyten gave me this like actually insightful take on it, and I just kept saying over and over again while he was speaking, yeah, but you should have bought BF Sword. A good ADC backs and buys BF Sword. To which Luyten eventually said, fine, I should have just not bought Dorans and first bought BF Sword. But yeah, these ADCs suck. They would lose to VLN ADC.
For sure.
But that's our upper bracket games. I do think it was surprising for Nova Chrysalis to go 2-0. Or 0-2, excuse me.
I think, for me personally, NS and V8 are both teams that once they lose, they're more likely to lose the next.
Don't talk about it yet. I haven't recovered.
So,
but
it's not the worst.
We go to losers bracket. So every game that we're about to talk to, the loser was actually eliminated from the tournament. And so we start off with Summit Admins versus Subtly Inting, which, wow, okay, seeing the gold graph, it's actually crazier than I thought. So I'm so surprised by the result of this series. I don't know if you guys were, but I kind of felt like Subtly Inting should never have gotten anything in this game. Straight up.
So I fucked up our bracket predictions, but I probably would have predicted an SI 2-1.
Oh, yeah, you'd say that now.
Yeah, of course. I think Summit had a lot of issues in playoffs. And then I think the biggest surprise here is the rosters. And it's like which one matters more. I think Isolation's been a pretty good ADC, so I would think Esper out for Pyrosis or in for Pyrosis would be a pretty bad drop, but it didn't seem to matter at all. So
I believe that guy has taken a vacation because I don't think he's played in the last like 3 SI series.
Pyrosis,
Yeah,
or
Pyrosis.
I don't know. I heard they got Donowalled by him or something, but
Yeah, I think he's hitting that quiet quit like it's COVID all over again.
Well, I hope he stays on vacation.
Well, this is secret leak. But how? No offense, Summit admins. Maybe you know. Why are we not playing Bouncy Knight here over Isolation?
he wasn't available to play.
Okay, that makes more sense then. Because when I saw this roster, I was like, are we egoing the guy because he's not an ADC main? Like, I don't get it. But that makes more sense actually.
Strand would have been nice as well, but I believe he was also out, and he's like getting a doctorate while also in 3 league tourneys, so he's just cooked no matter what.
GG. Thank you, Strand, for captaining.
Sorry, no, Strand is in DC.
Oh,
and
GG.
Bouncy had work, so yeah, they were just cooked, and then they also got even worse off game too. So
yeah, we'll get to the game too, the crazy game too.
I will say though that looking at it, right, I would not have been surprised, or I'm not surprised necessarily that SI comes out with a victory, because I think Tico Fighter is actually a really good top laner.
I agree with
he's
that.
Very deceptively strong, because you can fight Tico Fighter and you can beat him, right? And then he'll come back and you beat him, and then he'll come back having bought nothing, and he'll turn the fight entirely. And it's very, very difficult to gauge really where the limit is with Tico Fighter, because he's very, very good at sort of gauging that constantly and constantly trying to make action happen. 6-Foot Jat, I played with him, I think, in his first VLN tournament. Back then, he was a little too inconsistent, right? Like he'd had high highs and very low lows. But I think he's done a better job of sort of understanding that I can't necessarily be the main character, but when I have the chance to do that, I need to like full on send it, or else like we're not going to do that well. David Edge is also very, very good. He drafted me in my first VLN tournament. He was playing jungle back then though, and Dominus also very, very solid. So outside of really into 6-Foot Jack, I really don't necessarily think that Summit Admins has better laners necessarily. Esper into Tubbington is probably better, but I don't think Esper's champion pool allows you to necessarily really run them over. So I think in that regard, I was not necessarily surprised that SI was able to eke out a victory. Now, will they have been able to win the series entirely? I don't necessarily know that I would have predicted that, but I thought that I think, and I still think they were a very solid team overall.
Yeah, I
think.
Or go ahead, Luyten. Feel free.
David Edge specifically has impressed me pretty much the entire season so far, especially playing like 3 different roles and whatnot. He's done really well. So it's good to see that. Would you fully predict it? Yeah, I think it's hard, but I think their playoff is better than their regular season for sure, and they're kind of finally figuring things out at the end, it seems.
That makes sense. I do want to say, I said this on cast as well, or excuse me, I said this in chat. Domino Luminous having the season of a lifetime, by the way. I think he has been jailed a lot as a Nyla one trick, and I think a lot of the old heads even still look at him as just a Nyla one trick. And he's been pretty consistent off Nyla. Still can get the champion locked in and win games with it if he gets it. But like this game, he's had a lot of success on. And I think in many other games on a variety of different ADCs, we've seen him performing. And I would also argue 6'1" Jack, very consistent in the games, like Promech said. Still think he has some very low lows, like when he doesn't show up to a game because he wants to go work out instead. But like, what can you do, you know? But that leads us to the even sadder game too, which Luyten doesn't have here. This is Summon Admin's FF, but they drafted the game.
Yeah, so from my understanding, like in the middle of draft, somebody said they had to go or something like that, or somebody that was expected to come couldn't. I don't know the exact details, but Definitely a head scratcher.
Yeah, it was a wash too. Like some admins basically gave every one of their players their first or second best champion.
Oof.
I know Tico Fighter had the Tom Kench is his OTP, and a lot of chat were talking about that. I don't know, but I thought they saw the draft and were like, it's not even worth playing out, and just gave up the game.
That'd be crazy. Real quick, old lore. Who was the guy that built Kraken Slayer on Shin? Was that Sprinkler?
I don't know.
Somebody did that in a past tourney, and I can't remember who that was.
You'll
Didn't have it
no
last
idea.
time.
I have
Absolute
no
bummer.
idea either. It's definitely not that Promech guy. He would never do something that cool
No,
and
no,
fun.
no, I do cool and fun things. You can ask Louis. That Cho'Gath build was cool and fun.
I hate that Cho'Gath build. The passion. Oh my god.
But then we have Promech here to talk about his series, and I really want the inside analysis for this game from you guys. So we have AW or Atomic Whisker Brigade versus Mouth Breathers. Pretty sizable win. This is for game one's without Gumby, right, Promech?
Yes, game one is without Gumby.
But this roster, why is the first thing I gotta ask.
Our roster?
Yeah, why do we have Yoshi in for jungle?
Okay, so there's
You don't have to answer.
many different ways to break this down, but it really just comes down to Yoshi is a very vocal player, and he's very, very good at sort of deciding that things are going to happen. And if that's what's going to happen, we're very, very good at following it, right?
Yeah.
No like shot at Woof Woof or anything, but I think Woof Woof sometimes can miss calls that are being made by the team, and sort of that puts us in a kind of weird position to be able to really reclaim certain opportunities. Whereas Yoshi is very good at him being the way the call, and he makes a call. It's a lot easier for Loons to just follow through with it, me to follow through with it, or to follow through with it. Whereas with Hitler, he might not necessarily be giving any of the calls. He might be responding to the calls, and then something might get lost in communication, and so sometimes it doesn't work out, right? So she gives us a little more of a direction of how we want to play things out. So that makes a huge difference. Why we ran lineup. The Dune over Kittler support, for example, is quite literally because we picked Lulu for Kittler in one of our scrims, and Kittler said, "I'm not playing Lulu," and left. So we practiced June on Lulu. Turns out she's really good at Lulu. She's really annoying with her. So that's something that we kind of liked. And so having June's playstyle with Loon's playstyle just works for bot lane. So that's kind of why we decided to go with this lineup. And I think it's a pretty solid lineup. I really like how we play together.
Can I ask you the $1 million question? When you say we decided this lineup, does that include with Woof Woof's opinion in there or without it?
Woof Woof agreed to this lineup.
Okay.
But
we can leave it at that. We can just leave
Okay,
it at he agreed to the lineup, chat.
Okay, I'm gonna leak. Fuck it. So after our last game, that did not go as we planned, because quite frankly, and I'll stand to this day on that, I think that even though we lost the series against GT, if you really look at the games, AWB had a chance to win both games. The first one, we just kind of mental boomed, and sort of that's what lost the game, because I think that I was strong enough to be able to neutralize the bot lane, even though the bot lane was very ahead. I just think the natural Mordekaiser is able to win that trade out, and if I'm able to eliminate that, then I guess the rest of my team is able to sort of fit with the rest of the pieces. It was just we were out of that game mentally.
Yeah. Okay.
But the second game with Yoshi, I think they were really, really there. Like they could have won that game pretty. Like it could have easily gone either way. And I think that after that game, Woof Woof kind of noticed or realized that this just isn't working with him jungle. Not because he's a bad jungler, but because there's just that sort of communication issue missing, right? like Wufu started that second game. I think he was playing Briar. He went mid like 2 or 3 times, got kills there, right? But as the game went on, he was also trying to make this happen everywhere else without necessarily telling the team what was happening.
Yeah, that's where you get the
So,
two failed dives top lane that I talked about last week, where it was like
yeah.
he just solo dove tower alone and died twice.
Yeah, and so after that, Wufu actually came to the team and said, "Hey, I think we should try Yoshi jungle, and then like I'll rotate support, or if we want to run June or Goku, that's perfectly fine. But I think I'm stepping away from the jungle, at least for next series." So from there, we kind of decided that this was probably our best lineup. Pior obviously is going to be there. Alun is going to be there. But then if Yoshi's jungling, there is no other option for top lane. So that's kind of how that breaks down.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really, we were definitely thinking it. Like, I'm not going to lie, we were definitely thinking, like, hey, we need to make a change here. But Wufu was the one that actually came to the team and said, hey, I want to step down from here just because I don't think it's hard to play the game essentially.
Okay,
So
W woof woof. Hey, in chat, let's get some W woof woofs. I that's actually very refreshing to hear. I'm glad to hear it wasn't either a mutiny or a big fight. And I like you guys kind of played crazy with the change. Like it does seem 26. I would imagine this roster. Like if someone told me AWB won this game, I'd be like, okay, I feel like these teams are pretty equal. And then you look at the score and it's 7-26. It wasn't equal. This was an AWB sided matchup, start to finish.
yeah, no, we felt good going into it, and when we had our draft, we played the game. It's kind of funny, and I like to go on tangents, so if I'm talking too much, let me know. But specifically before our series, we played the game, and I've played with Pior a couple of times, but I've always seen Pior kind of as a grandmaster, and this is something that masters do. They will essentially make sure they win the lane, right? And then when the game comes out, they'll get online and do their things. But because of our play style, a lot of the times I don't interact with Pior pretty much the entire game. Like there might be a team fight here or there, but outside of that, Pior is always on one side. I'm in the other side. That's just how our AWB plays. And we had a moment in the game where it was literally me, Pior versus 3 people, and we pulled that fight out of nowhere. Like there was no reason we should have won that fight. It was really risky, and we sort of like got it at that point, or I got it at that point that like Pior is actually really, really, really good, and all we need to do is really just set him up to be able to do what he does, and he's going to show up late game. Like that is something we can count on fully, and it makes the game a lot easier when you know that, because particularly as a weak side top lane player, like if my lane is cooked, right, and then bot lane is cooked, it used to feel like, okay, the game is just over. Whereas now in mid lane, because we have someone that's a little more consistent than our other options, it feels like in any game, it doesn't matter who's feeding, the rest of us can just rise up and do it.
Okay, and so would you say, because to my knowledge, elo for elo, Pior is actually significantly lower than Reborn Mountain was. But would you say AWB is stronger with Pior than it was with Reborn?
It's hard to say. I would say yes, only because okay, it's a difficult question to answer, but basically, I think that what Reborn Mountain brought to our team is something that Yoshi similarly brings to our team, because Reborn Mountain was very, very good at sort of directing us as well, and that's
Okay.
if you look at the early games, it's very, very clear that we play a very sort of determined game style when Reborn was in, and Yoshi can do a lot of that as well. He can't jungle to the same level, and he will make jungle mistakes along the way, but it's still that voice that we really needed. And so having Pior there, it's like we traded our GM jungle for like a diamond jungle now, and we still have a GM mid laner now, as opposed to either I was going to mid lane, or Killer was going to mid lane, or Polaris was going to mid lane, and none of us really like would have done super well. Like I probably would have done fine, but it would have been a lot of sort of giving up lane to help other people. That's just my play style in mid lane. Whereas Pior can just carry games on his own. So we probably are like much stronger with Pior than with Reborn.
That's good to know. Hey, Luyten, what are you thinking?
I think what he was talking about with Yoshi, palm-wise and whatnot, it makes a lot of sense. It's pretty much how my team chose our roster this week. It's pretty much why WoW chose their roster. having vocal people, I think ideally 2 or 3, is really important, and then also just being on the same page most of the time is really, really important in these settings. So it makes sense from how he explains it all.
Chat, put a pin in this. Put a pin in this for later. We'll talk about that later as well. As we go to this second game, which this is with Gumby Power in it, I believe y'all even let him get his Echo mid lane. It does look like it was way scrappier. There's definitely some risk involved in this game. But you guys still come out with the lead, which must make you ecstatic, right? Like, to beat the roster that I got complaints about being able to be played in finals.
Yeah, no, we expected Gumby game 1. So I think when he wasn't there, it kind of gave us a lot of confidence going into that first game. I think that's actually a mistake on their side. Obviously, they can't play Gumby all series, so they have to kind of, unless they decide to play a bronze player, so they probably didn't want to give that up. But the truth of the matter is that when Gumby wasn't there game 1 and we realized, wait a minute, like everywhere else, we're fine, right? Like we can actually like win this game out and assume that Gumby is like super fed and we can ignore him because we've won everywhere else. And that kind of gave us that confidence moving into this game with Gumby that, okay, wherever Gumby is, we might be able to be fine with whatever happens in that lane. All right. We expected him to go jungle because we think that that probably would have been the most impactful because Yoshi, that's why he picked the Amumu essentially because it's like, okay, like if Gumby jungles, I can't necessarily like match him.
Yeah.
So I can play something that's a little more that can clear fine, and it's not necessarily going to carry, but it will definitely allow the rest of my team to be able to do things, right? So that's kind of the logic there. And so when he picked the Echo, we actually thought he was just gonna jungle it. And we were fine with that. And then we saw the Shinzao and we were like, okay, so he's going mid. Okay, cool. And if he was mid, he's against Pior, and I think that's not necessarily like the greatest thing for Mouth Beaters because he's not going to be able to snowball off Pior. We were very confident that wasn't going to happen. So when we have that sort of game plan into Gumby, where we are like, if he pops off for 40 kills, like we'll be fine. We can beat everybody else. It's just where he's going to be a problem. And then that doesn't come to fruition, then it becomes a lot sort of. It was kind of a breath of fresh air when Gumby was just he was very strong, but he wasn't necessarily able to capitalize on our mistakes as much.
Yeah, I mean that's
I
good
agree with you that I think Pior is probably the worst matchup for Gumby, and switching to Yeet Yote isn't that much of a drop off. I think they definitely should have put him in jungle, and maybe it's also a little bit of hindsight because I think this was probably Wajin's worst game ever, and if you had Oshan ADC, maybe it goes a little bit better. But I do think it is surprising to see them match him into your guy's best player.
Yeah, and we're not going to talk about the 18-1 Kaisa in the room too? Like, Alun, in my opinion, I don't think Alun's necessarily underperforming throughout this season. Like, I do think he's been a carry, and as especially for like communication and direction for the team, and he's never played poorly. But I think going into the draft, especially because he's the lowest point ADC, and I think it's pretty far between him and the second, or no, I guess it's him and different, and then there's a gap between STL and him.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him put up these like stunner performances like we've seen different or STL do locking Jinx and Caitlyn, because I think he picks things that are less about that, especially like the Zeri pick. I think it's more about like as the game goes on, I'm just constantly getting stronger so our team can win. But to see it in this game and in finals, like when the lights are the brightest, when times are the toughest, he actually drops an 18-1 against the best player in our tournament, like on the enemy team being present, who should know how to play around that. Just absolute hands off to Alun. It was a beautiful, beautiful game that he played.
No, for sure. Alun was 100% the carry this game. Like he really like popped off. But that's kind of what we expect on AWB. We're kind of we feel that Alun is our best performing player overall, and if he's having a good game, we can really play around him. That's generally why I'm so comfortable playing the weak side top laners, because I know that when the fights come around, I don't got to worry about nothing else except keeping Alun alive. If I can keep Alun alive, we win the fight, right? So I could help June or help Goku or whoever support to keep him alive, we should be generally in strong spots. So Elune popping off here isn't a surprise for us, and I expect that fully. I think Elune is probably, if we're being fair about it, the best AD carry. I think Different would objectively like rank above him, but I think Different has Levi, and I think that that makes a big sort of difference. Whereas Alun has had to like play his game with low PV, with high PV supports, and he's done a very very good job of helping them and bringing them to a higher level than I think even they're really sure of. Like June this game like was hitting really good ults. Like she was like June pretty much has performed really really great whenever she's been in. Like I think there was one ult where we were doing Otacon. Shinzao jumps in. June has ulted already. He gets hit by her ult, turns around, and that's the fight we kind of run through them. And it's a lot of sort of confidence in June being able to play these kind of crowd control things that allow Loon to really like flourish in these matches.
Promech, I'm actually unironically moved. You speak so genuinely sweetly about your team, that I'm officially an AWB supporter now. I'm praying for y'all's success as I transition to a pool 1 warrior. And you guys are a team made of like a good amount of new blood and a good amount of old blood that I actually do hope to continue to see you guys succeed. Luyten, anything else you got on this series as well?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, then we move on. Oh no, okay. This is not where I'm supposed to be here. I was setting up a transition to be like, I'm supporting you now because I'm out, but then they're out of order. So just my whole fuck me for my transition, I guess.
Ooh, my bad, my
It's
bad.
okay. Wizards of Wahoo versus 2, probably the most one-sided matchup we've seen in playoffs so far. Which also just man, Wizards of Wahoo, I actually genuinely think they could win the whole tournament.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily off this game because I do think the World Orders were the weakest performing team in finals. And we can see
in
it
playoffs.
in playoffs. I say finals to mean playoffs because in my mind it is the final stage. It's blah. It doesn't matter. I'll need to correct my language. But oh my god, they're stronger without Death March? Can we just say that? Like, can we just say it openly that they're better without Death March?
Again, like I said, it's communication is big. I think Deathmarch is the better player, but it clearly doesn't work out with the team. To credit Deathmarch, this is not 2's best team. They were missing both Ali XO and Hune, which is, I wouldn't say significant downgrades, but like that would be their best roster, and I think they definitely felt it in this series.
I was wondering why Ali wasn't playing.
Word,
Ali's very, very good.
Word on the street is Ali got evicted from her house and had to leave.
Damn.
And so this is not trying to cope, but that actually means 2 teams were eliminated because they could not put up their best roster because one of their players got evicted that week, which is crazy
Weird,
to
it
say.
happened twice.
Yeah.
in a week. Yeah.
It is genuinely crazy that it happened twice. But I mean, it's like watching this series on the stream, I thought that there was hope in this game because Edmonto gets the Twitch, and I believed in my bones he could do it. And then they lost in every lane this first game and in the second game. But like this one, you felt like the moment the game effectively started, the whole rift was just owned by Wizards of Wahoo. They were a coordinated competitive team as opposed to the World Orders, which they're strong individual players in their own right and can play well, but I don't think they ever united into being more than the sum of their parts.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. I think WoW is a very strong team. It's a pool 1 team, and I think pool 1 teams are just really, really good.
Yes.
But I think WoW, we've played against them, and they're very, very good, and they capitalize on your mistakes very, very well. And unfortunately for the World Order, there's just not a lot of room to make any mistakes whatsoever. The World, I think, is a flying top laner, but not necessarily someone that I would expect to be able to hold his own against someone like Siltal. I think Siltal is very aggressive and very sort of annoying to deal with as a laner. I played with him a couple of times, and he's really fucking annoying to deal with.
Yeah,
Sorry. for the
agreed. No,
language.
I'm right there with you. We're top lane brothers in this episode, Promech.
Yeah.
I know the exact
See?
things you're talking about.
Yeah, but and then outside, I love Ed. Is my homie. Every time we play on Minecraft server, I end up wherever Ed is at. I'll build a little house next to him. He's my homie. I love Ed. But this was a very tall task, and unfortunately, I don't think there was a lot of opportunities for really them to win this game out. Even with what I think is probably the stronger draft, but I just don't think that it matches up as well. I think
Yeah,
it's very, very difficult to execute.
it's and this is just objective analysis, nothing attached to skill. Player to player, it was just lost, right? Like their one technically better lane is Edmonto, which I even think Reaper's Blade has peaked similarly to Edmonto based on raw rank. But
Yeah.
I think you nailed it perfectly. It was a tall task, and I do believe in my heart of hearts there is a world out there. Edmonto put up a 30-0 performance this game and carried them. This just wasn't that world.
Yeah.
I think that world was a lot more likely next game.
Well, let's just jump to it. I mean, he sets us up the perfect transition. We have his Smolder. He does get, admittedly, I had to leave for the second game. Caught VLN didn't get to watch the second game on stream because I was dealing with house things in my real world. So talk me through it. How did I see he gets the Smolder?
Yeah. They're like absolutely stomping bot lane for like 5 minutes, probably less than that actually, and then they decide to try to dive the bot lane when you have Smolder or Aurelion Soul.
That's
And
Aurelion
they give a
Soul
double
support?
kill. No, just like
Oh, okay.
He just happened to be
you have
there.
Giga scaling,
Yeah.
and we're trying to dive the enemy bot lane when we have a winning lane state with a Smolder. And they give the Trista double, or two of them die, maybe even three, I can't remember. And like they still kind of keep winning bot lane after, but eventually it starts losing out because of the consequences of that, I would have to assume. Like it was a good game from Ed, but they just kept fighting despite having this insane scaling comp. I don't know why they didn't just chill out, and if they did, maybe they could win. But they just could not stop throwing
Just
hands. I don't know.
It also.
I think they were just worried that they weren't able to. I think it was more so when they looked at like top lane. It was
Top
like
lane was
we-
absolutely disgusting.
I need
yeah.
to be stronger than the Darius is, and I'm trying to do that by essentially forcing my advantage as well as I could. I agree with you. I don't think they needed to do that. I think they just waited out. And Malphite, even if he's really behind, will build tanky enough to become a problem anyway. And I think that there was one moment where the Tristana went in on the Twitch, and the Tristana or on the Smolder, and 100% Tristana should win that matchup, and she just didn't. After that happened, I was like, okay, like Ed can just carry this game. Like that's just what's going to happen, because if Reaper's Blade at this point can't kill him, like who's going to kill the Ed as the game goes on? Because even though Darius can kill him, like they have a Poppy, they have a Malphite, they have like a lot of options to kind of keep Ed safe. But unfortunately, it just wasn't the case.
Do we know when this Malphite was picked for this game, by the way? At what position?
I think it was a counter to the Darius.
Because that's just not a counter matchup, right? Like even if you're ruling out skill, doesn't Darius just beat Malphite because the bleed plus true damage with ult?
No.
No.
Yes. Okay. Yes and no, because essentially Darius has all the kill potential on the Malphite, but the Malphite should never be in a position to where the Darius can catch him out.
Okay.
Because even if Darius pulls you and doubles you, you Q and you walk away. And the Malphite should always have the movement speed far longer than the slow on Darius lasts. And so, in theory, you should be able to stalemate the matchup. I wouldn't necessarily pick the Malphite just because.
You also have a Lily
wanna
and Morgana in this game as well. To be
Yeah,
picking
yeah, but it's
Malphite.
more so if I'm picking Malphite and I want to stack armor, I don't really have options to also add health into the Darius. Right, so my health pool is essentially the limiting factor because he does true damage.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a lot harder to play the line out. But I've played that matchup multiple times and have not necessarily had big troubles against the Darius. It's more so just an issue of Zoltar is really annoying. Like it really comes back to that. Like Zoltar is really, really good. And if you give him a champion like Darius, he's going to find the little angles where if you're not going to fight me, you're not CSing. And then it becomes a game where I'm like, okay, well now I have to walk up the CS and risk my entire life for 2 minions. And so I think that is kind of how it plays out.
It's also
with the skill matchup there.
It's crazy for me too. Like the reason I even asked the position is because, like, I do think Malphite when you have Lilia Morgana on the opponent team is like a bad pick. Then you look at their three tanks, right? They have Malphite, Poppy, and Skarner, and yeah, they build Merc Treads, but then it's just full armor. We see a Spectral Cow on Skarner, but if y'all were saying and Mata was just winning this bot lane, seems like really poor itemization on their part.
Well, I assume that they were thinking about the Darius, which is a mistake, because the Darius build, if you look at it, it doesn't really. It's not a lethality build, so my armor isn't necessarily going to negate what Darius's biggest damage is going to be. Like they could have afforded to buy more so MR, particularly against the Lilia. Like I'm surprised there was the decision to go Frozen Heart into a Thornmail.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't think you needed both. I think particularly with the matchups that you're playing against, if the Darius is going to heal, believe me, he's not going to auto attack you before he Qs you. He's going to Q you, heal, and then go in. And that's pretty much the only person you're building Thornmail for. So you can probably avoid that and go straight into one of the AP options. I probably would have built, particularly in his position, I probably would have first built the Sunfire item that's for AP, even if I'm against the Darius, because it denies Morgana and Lilia whenever I fight them, but it also helps me push the lane and keep me sort of relevant in terms of CS.
That's the name of it.
Yeah,
I was searching the mind bank. Yeah, no, I agree with you.
That's what I
agree
would
with you.
have gone with.
But I mean, it's just, I think the odds were just slim for the world orders to begin with. I think we're,
definitely some disrespect to Morg damage as well, like you say. Maybe if you think Lily is the only AP damage, I could get it, but I think the Morg did the most damage.
Yeah, but we can't glaze Happier Cat,
some MR.
or she'll yap harder. You know what I mean? We gotta
right.
Happier Cat's damage is low.
She's earned the yap for this.
Yeah, I suppose that's fair.
Wait, but if you're saying Morgana damage is low, then you're just gassing her up more because they did damage.
Yeah, she did 40k.
Well, no, we're trying to gaslight her. We're not gassing her up. We're trying to gaslight her, guys.
Okay.
Oh, I see.
I got to move away from the statement of gaslighting women to, if I may, have a soapbox moment for a second before we get into the analysis of the match. With the elimination of 8-cylinder, I am officially retiring from League of Legends tournaments, for sure my own, 99% sure. I will never play in another tournament again, regardless of where it is. It was a ton of fun. I fucking loved it, being start to finish involved with everything, watching teams, rooting for my friends, playing in it. And for the first time ever, I was on a good team. Like, I have played in 2 other tournaments. One was my own, and we got absolutely fucking schmaleated. Wasn't even close to being close. And then another was redacted, since they don't want to parlay with me. And I liked that team a lot, but this one was mine. And I felt genuine pride when we won, and I felt genuine sadness when we lost. And I'm going to get emotional thinking about it because it's actually really bittersweet. I think my team is hands down better than Lacuna Matata. And this series proved it to me. Not to cope, but we do lose Agu to him being evicted this same week. And so he can't show up, and we put in Owlbird. There were people saying, why didn't I put myself in? I think I'm a downgrade to my team. I don't think I have the chops in me to play competitively and feel that pressure on how I perform. And Owlbird did. And so now that I'm not emotional, I'm going to step down and we can just talk rationally about the games. TV beat the shit out of you, Lacuna. You're not even close to being close, okay? There are 1,000 people in line before you even step up to the king. As long as he breathes, there's a chance, ladies and gentlemen. And TV was breathing this whole game. Monstrous around the entirety of the Rift. Sprinkler's Grandmaster. Albert is a gold mid laner. off-roll to top lane. You couldn't tell by the results of this game that that's true. TV put Lacuna in a body bag. This champion's OP Lacuna. You're boosted. Can't even get back to Diamond 2. By the way, it doesn't matter the results of this series. Bubbles did all right. I think he had a really rough early lane, but kind of really brought it back in the later games. And go fuck yourself. Well, actually, Solar Flare and True Light, y'all are great. I'm going to say this. I actually like you guys a lot. But go fuck yourselves. You're not even close. You're not even close to being close. You're further away from Ping Spam Geeky than Lacuna is from TV. Okay? And this series, 7-30. All right? That's Lacuna's bedtime, 7:30. Just remember that for later. It wasn't, God, we beat the shit out of them. And this roster has 2 gold players on it. And this was hands down Lacuna Matata's best roster, and they even said it loading in. I made Lacuna publicly say in all chat first game, this is the best of the best Lacuna Matata could bring forward. They could not get any stronger. And we were the only elimination game to go to 3 games this weekend. And this is arguably the weakest roster we could have put forward without actively choosing to end. That's my fair and unbiased analysis of the game. How do you guys feel about it?
I think you guys had a really good draft here. I think getting Ping Spam on one of his APCs is really good, and like then having the other AP champ being TV and jungle is just a really, really good draft. And the damage chart doesn't do it justice how good TV played this game. He was legit like unkillable 1v9. I mean, not 1v9. Your team played really well, but he was insane this game for sure.
Yeah, for those of you who want to know how to beat Lacuna Matata, there are 2 steps. It's actually the most easy to beat team in the entire tournament. We'll talk about why we didn't manage to operate on it. But it's one of 2 things. 1, play top laners that just stall Sprinkler. I don't care if you just put your top laner on Malphite and have him AFK under turret. As long as Sprinkler is not at like 3 kills, 2 kills coming out of lane, he's actually much more manageable as a player than you would think with a Grandmaster. And 2, unhouse Lacuna. Lacuna is a merchant. Like, he doesn't have Volibear this game, 1-6. He doesn't have Volibear the next game. And even though they win, he's like playing atrociously. He gets a lot of kills early in the 3rd game and still falls off a cliff. If you want to beat Lacuna Matata, you do those 2 things. Nothing else matters. You'll win the game. And this one was just much more of a stomp. Like, it wasn't even close, like not even to just repeat the same things I'm saying. I don't know what happened internally with Lacuna Matata for this to go so bad. I do know that it went so bad that they were giving up in the middle of the game as they played and wanted to adapt their draft where they go into game 2, and it is Lacuna sided. You can see we're a bit scrappy with it, but I'm not going to, we see what the problem is. Okay. Note that the problem is the Grandmaster top laner. All right. Just want that on the list. And it was just who was a better player, Ping Spam or Sprinkler. And unfortunately, Sprinkler on the Gwen was just a better player. I do have disagreements with Bubbles. Bubbles was our draft coordinator. I would never doubt his independent draft. He is objectively better than me. He will always be better than me, and he is just smarter than me as a guy. But I do think we really messed up putting Owlbird on Jax here. He gets killed very, very early, solo killed. Turned into Gwen with a solo kill gets a double off a failed gank topside between TV and Owl. And Gwen is, I think it's 8 minutes, is 3-0. And at that point, it's like lights out. You know what I mean? Ping Spam really does try his best. And I think within this comp, we have a chance if we didn't, and this is going to be so cope. Everyone's going to be like, VLN's coping. We fucked up draft here because we didn't do our ready checks properly, which is my fault. And not all of our team was on the draft knowing that it was being drafted, and we were about to time out a pick. So Bubbles just had to force lock himself Talia, even though our team has always relied on jungle ADC support and then giving Bubbles counter pick if he wants it. And so we just kind of shot ourselves in our foot. And even then, the game felt winnable. Like, we had a 12-0 Gwen, but Ping Spam was 12-7. Like, there was a world we win this series. And unfortunately, it just wasn't this world.
Ping Spam tried his damnedest to keep this game close, and it wasn't enough, but he had a good try for sure.
And notice
I'm
again.
just gonna say it.
Or go ahead. Now, go ahead, Promech.
I think you win this game. if you're playing top lane. I think that the Sen to Gwen matchup is a lot more digestible. The
I,
problem with the Jax match, I think Jax is a fine matchup into Gwen, except when the Gwen player is a better player. I think that's actually a very, very 50-50 matchup. And I think if the Gwen player is ever better in any 50-50 matchup, the Gwen will always win. Even if the players are even, I think the Gwen still wins,
Mhm.
particularly because your biggest tool as Jax is to be able to dodge, right, with your E. But if you're dodging with your E, Gwen is queuing you while you're dodging. She doesn't lose out damage, and then she can turn out because now your E is down, right? And it becomes very like as Jax, you effectively, if I'm not mistaken, have to run like the phase rush build. You have to do short trades, get in there, get out, and sort of do those short trades, and then win the game later on slower. But in lane, that is not a fun matchup for the Jax like ever.
I
And so
do.
I think that that is a very big sort of oversight in the draft because I think that what you don't want to have is Sprinkler getting super comfortable, and I just think that that was the case here. I do agree that this game was very winnable on V8 side. I think that there was a very clear path to do it, and unfortunately, V8 just didn't see it. Because I think so, I want to shout out Solar Flare.
Yeah,
I've never played with him, but I was listening to the comms from the Kuna stream when I was watching the game, and he's very, very good at sort of making his team see the big picture and sort of see like, hey, this is how this should go. Like we need to be very prepared for this. And when he was talking, it was very, very clear that his team kind of was able to follow his logic, and that made a big difference. Ping Spam, I think, is a very, very good player. I've also played with him. He's been my AD carry, and I've been his support. I think he's someone that you really need to kind of I don't want to say drag, but you kind of need to sort of direct him at times. But I think he's very solid, and it's just unfortunate that he wasn't able to carry this game, which I think was in his position to do. But Gwen is immune,
yeah.
and you kind of just can't kill her.
I do. I think you were talking about Sprinkler when you said Solar Flare, by the way. I might be wrong. I'm still learning their voices, but I do think that would, because that was, Sprinkler was the one perma pinging maps, permanently talking about like objectives. I might be wrong. They know him better than I do, but
I thought it was Solar, but it might be Sprinkler because I think he mentioned something of the bot lane. Whoever it was that was talking, shout out to them because it was very like noticeable in that second game specifically when they're going into it that they saw what they needed to do and they understood as a team kind of where this win should be coming from.
yeah. And I don't want to discredit, like I'm biased towards V8. I don't want to discredit Lacuna Matata. I do think Sprinkler played an amazing game. This was the type of game I was afraid of Sprinkler being in the tournament for, and I'm so sad that the first game we get to see Sprinkler at 100% power is in a series against me. And I do think Solar Flare, which everyone was making, also had a great one. His AP Varus was, or excuse me, AD Varus was still a threat. Like it wasn't like it was a one-sided game, one carry for one carry. They still found ways to win. It was just sad to see this go out of the window. What I felt like very early, and then see it like there was a gleaming hope if someone could have like taken the wheel. And I do think I could have beat Sprinkler's Gwen. I had it in that dog in me that day that my set would have been untouchable. I think they would have banned it. I actually think they would have. And even if they wouldn't have, like again, the pressure of comp makes me piss my pants, man. You guys are impressive that run this all. You two, I'm pointing at you two. You can't see me, but like the fact that you guys do this and you find success against way better opponents. It's a skill. Like it is an impressive skill to have. And I think Owlbird responded to it better. The other thing I want to jump in on is I do think you hit. There was something you said earlier that was like our exact weakness, and I've forgotten. We'll go to the third game. I'll come back to it. Or go ahead.
On that comment, he was talking about Sprinkler and Solar or whoever it is on their side. I question who on V8 is your like leader in shot caller?
That's what it was. We struggled to have a voice, and I think that's something I could never accept for myself. To everyone in chat who's about to think VLN has an ego, I don't think I can shot call. I don't think I understand the game well enough to make those decisions or figure things out. But what I can do is be an engine for communication, right? I don't think I needed to be talking to coordinate anything. I think in games, I needed to be the guy talking to get my good players to coordinate things.
Okay, time out. Before you continue, I want to make it clear to chat. VLN 100% has an ego. It's just that he also knows what he doesn't know.
Yeah.
So he's very, very good at identifying. If I don't know shit here, I'm not going to talk, because if I talk and it doesn't go well, my ego's going to take a hit. So I'm protecting myself in that regard. But he definitely has.
Okay. I guess Promech gets to be on the cast to talk shit about me, and I just got to eat it. Okay. I do think that's it. And I wasn't in these games to know, right? So, bubbles or TV, if you're here, say something, or if you watch this back, say something. But through the whole season, we struggled because I think we actually had two of arguably in their role the best players. I actually think high recommendations for everyone on my team in future drafts to be drafted. But TV and Ping Spam specifically, I genuinely believe PV to performance, TV is the best jungler in the tournament, hands down. And I think Ping Spam is up there. It's actually tough because some of the highest elo, like I think Different, is actually performing PV to performance, even though he's really, really high. But Ping Spam is probably the third or the fourth best ADC in here entirely. He can win from positions where they're losing. And still, we never had that identity. I know from the games that I played, it was bad. And I feel watching these games, it was the same. And I tried every game in between games to do constant reminders. Between game 1 and game 2, I tried to stress to TV that, like, honestly, you should let top lane bleed out. How top lane should play out in my mind is that Owlbird should never, regardless of the matchup, engage with Sprinkler just for the fear of that kill, in all honesty. And TV should be perma bot side, especially on a pick like Jarvan, locking up Varus, locking up Renata, and letting his Twitch become a machine gunner and stuff like that. And I don't want to speak definitively, but we always struggled to have a voice. And anytime there was a voice, it took piss low VLN forcing it out of people, except for 1 week. 1 week, the second to last week of playoffs, me and TV got into like an hour-long conversation about it. And that weekend specifically, he calmed out of his mind. And if you go look back, I don't have the results in my mind, but the second to last week of regular season, we beat the dick out of teams that week. And I think if we could have had one player really step up, we would have been fine. And these are all hindsight things to look at. I think TV is a great enabler jungler. If you're right now, he might change, he might become better. If you're looking for a jungler who can do insane things, if you have someone to help direct them, TV is better than Riddy and Billy, straight up. And I think the same goes with Ping Spam. I think Ping Spam has a great knowledge of the game. I think he doesn't want to have to direct low elo players, which is completely fair. I'm a shitter, man. I don't listen to the things he tells me to do sometimes because I'm zoned out. I think if he's on a team where one other person can just tell you things, I think he could smash through SDL. I think he could smash through Different. I think he could smash through Alone. And we just never came to it. And we go to this game 3. All right, let me show this actually. I wanted to talk about it, but I tried to get as hands-on as I could this series. I've talked at length with Bubbles about some of the things here as well, and I trust his judgment over mine. But I do have opinions about this game. One, we thought it was Vayne ADC. Turns out that was a mistake in draft. But I think that the Ornn matchup is actually fine. I entrusted him to do the refill into Doran's tech. He ends up getting beat. And some people will say, if you're going to lock him on Ornn anyway, why not put me in? Refer back to my mushy gushy at the beginning. But I actually think that our biggest issue here is that we didn't refer back to those 2 steps about beating Lacuna Matata I said earlier. Right? Like, I think Ornn can be fine doing literally nothing in this lane. Naturally, you don't want your players to do that, but I think if Owlbird just sits AFK under lane, he's fine. But we actually gave away a lot of kills to the Vayne in lane. Not all at once, but over the course of laning phase. And we didn't unhouse Lacuna. He had the Xin Zhao warmed up, and we were talking about picking the Viego before we ever see draft, and we B1 Viego. And I actually think it would have been better if we don't pick the Viego and we took the Xin Zhao. Not because the Viego is a bad pick. I want that explicitly stated. I don't think the Viego is bad in any way. You know, some people might say B1ing it is bad because you let them counter it, but I don't even care about that. And I don't think TV's performance on Viego is bad, anything like that. I think we would just be stronger in a game state where TV is on Xin Zhao. That's a pick that can still carry, and it can still enable if things don't go well. And we kick Lacuna off I think his second best champion, right? And we force him maybe back onto the Udyr, which he played horribly with, and we just make him more unconscious. And then we also provide an additional avenue to escape for our Kog'Maw if things got bad. Because if the Ornn can't keep him off, then Xin Zhao's in ultimate. We save the Kog'Maw. He can just doom, artillery, kill them all. But that's all beside the point. I don't think our draft was necessarily bad. But I felt going into this game 3 that there was a lot of want for this game to win. I actually think that wanting to win so bad made us lose. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Wanting to put your best foot forward, I think.
How did you get with this? What were your bans? Because my big thing is I don't understand how you don't just copy paste your game 1
So that was
draft. You banned the Gwen this time. Okay.
That was another thing that we talked about, and I'm seriously wanting feedback on this, okay? Because I felt like my third eye awoke in this game, and I wanted to tell my team because they wanted to ban the Gwen. I said, don't. I think it's a better idea to leave the Malzahar up, because our team has never really successfully had 2 carries active at the same time. So Malzahar hard counters us. We play to have TV and ping spam enabled. We kind of failed to deliver that for whatever reason. It's no one's fault. But Malzahar, if you're a 1-carry team, counters you because he presses R on your 1 carry and you lose the fight. I stress that I think a better idea would be to put Owlbird on Mundo, even though Mundo gets absolutely dick smacked by Gwen, because Owlbird knows that matchup. He knows he gets dick smacked, and he doesn't have to worry about it, right? He plays like he is going to lose, so we don't just perma feed him. His Mundo did best the game 1, and I think genuinely if we put him here in this matchup, we still ban the Malzahar. We don't have to worry about it, carry getting locked up. And Owlbird knows he's playing to lose, right? I think your highest PV players, your worst players, comfort matters the most to them because they get the game, they get how they win, even against high-low players. Like, the fact that Sprinkler can more easily exploit Owlbird doesn't make him forget he's exploitable, right? That was my opinion for it.
The Ornn, at least, I think, is kind of a necessity here. Without it, like, if you throw a Mundo there, your engage is non-existent. Like, you're hoping Galio... I mean, you can play permanent disengage with Galio, but even then, Mundo's not peeling your Kog'Maw. Diego probably isn't.
Pair that with the Xin Zhao comment. That's what was going on in draft. And rather than having the Viego.
Isn't engage. And into you thought the Vayne was ADC, so that sucks. But
yeah.
I can understand where you guys got your draft from, but it was definitely missing pieces here and there. And I think the biggest thing is like the Malzahar is a big giveaway, and I don't know if it's worth like drop a Varus ban, drop the Gwen ban. I think he'll be fine.
I think
one of those.
The thing I learned from captaining for this game is that at some point, the worst thing you can do is doubt, right? And like I went in, I made my pitches on what I thought were best. I felt this at the end of the last tournament I was a part of. I felt if I was higher elo, the things I said might have been taken a bit more seriously. But I'm 39% win rate silver 2, so I got to eat that. But the moment I said what I said, and Bubbles was like, I don't think so, I put my trust in him, right? Because I don't want him going into the game thinking I doubted him. I actually don't think this is necessarily that bad. I trust his judgment over mine. But we talked about it in draft. I said, if we're not banning the Malzahar, both of our carries have to be active. And naturally, you always wish that, but they just weren't. And it just means it didn't matter who won. It didn't matter if Viego went crazy or Ping Spam went crazy. Malzahar would always be one of them. And we lose. The first time we've lost a series that I thought we were just objectively better than our opponent. I think I genuinely maintain the belief, and if my team wanted to, I would run a show match for it, and Lacuna teams wanted to, that if we had Agu top, we'd 2-0 this series. Same team for, like, different drafts, of course, but same players for Lacuna Matata. versus us just with our Masters top laner. Because we took this to game 3. Game 1 was a stomp, wasn't even close to close. Game 2, we had a chance, and this game 3, I think we were just sold out. I would even be willing to run it back with me in there now that the pressure's off. I'll beat the shit out of Sprinkler. I'll send him packing with Gumby.
Okay, I want to
Go ahead.
give my 2 cents on this game specifically because I think that this game, like at draft level, is 100% VA sided. I think this is a game that VA should have won. I think that this is like you have all the makings for Viego and Kog'Maw to both be perfectly fine in fights, even with the Malzahar. Malzahar should have been banned. That's another set issue in itself. But I think that this was a lot more winnable than it looks. And it comes down to a couple of things. Number one, Albert not being a top laner. That's essentially the issue with that matchup specifically for top lane. Because I have one question, VLN. What runes would you go into the Vayne matchup?
Personally, and I'm not an Ornn merchant, I feel like in any range matchup, you're supposed to go the Comet build, right? Or am I crazy?
Airy.
Or yeah, the Airy.
Yeah.
Whichever one shoots the little guy at him, and then when you hit him, you get the bonus damage.
So that is something that is simply that Albert doesn't know, and that's not his fault. It's not his role, right? But it's tech that is really important for this kind of matchup because number one, if you go Airy into the Vayne, as soon as you have Bramble Vest, she can no longer do what she wants in lane. Because anytime she auto attacks you, it triggers Airy. She takes more damage than her auto attack did to you, and you can walk away before her third auto attack cues. And if she follows you to hit that third auto attack, Airy will come back up and hit her again. Right? So it's a matchup that as soon as Airy is online and you have the Bramble, Vayne can't do everything she wants. But on top of that, the TV should just camp the Vayne. My Kog'Maw Lulu lane, I don't care what happens in lane. As long as Kog'Maw can farm, I don't care what happens in lane. Kog'Maw's going to be strong late game. Obviously, if he gets camped, that's an issue. But I'm not super worried about Pink Spam losing bot lane to Solar and Chewy Light. They played very well, but in my mind, there's no world where that's an issue. Where especially if he has a Lulu, it doesn't exist in my mind the world where I need to worry about my bot lane at all. So where are my options? I can either camp mid lane, probably not. There's a Malzahar there. He's gonna be super safe. So where's my option? Oh, the Vayne has to walk up every time she wants to CS. She can either queue in to do auto to Albert, or she has to queue out, and she can only eat one of us. Like effectively, I feel that this is a lane situation where you can literally just freeze out the Vayne. Vayne doesn't get to have fun this game. And I think that that's just a misread, and it's in two parts. Obviously, I understand TV's perspective of, hey, Albert isn't going to be our carry. He's an Ornn. I don't care if he really gets ahead. He's just going to be useful later on. I don't have to divert resources. But I think it's a misunderstanding of the situation because in that situation, I think TV gets all the kills. TV gets fed. Vayne becomes significantly weaker. And now Vayne is playing catch up against an Ornn that as soon as he has items, he is kill pressure on the Vayne because Ornn just kills weak 80 carries. Like Vayne can E him out of his engage, but if he's doing that, you're not taking damage from the Vayne. She used her big ability, anyone can come in and do it. And if you're good enough, you can just W her E and now she can't get away from you. So I think there's a lot of options for the Ornn to kill pressure the Vayne. And in fact, I have the numbers, right? Like Ornn has like a 60% win rate with the Airy build into that Vayne matchup specifically. Like that is just a lane matchup that Ornn will kill her every time. And it's just a situation where, oh, Albert's not comfortable on this champion and TV probably doesn't want to invest resources there, but it's one of those rare situations where as a weak side top laner, I'd be really angry at my jungler if he didn't come to capitalize on it because it's a greedy pick that should never be allowed to just do what she wants. Like that should be punished 100% of the time. So I think that that's just, and I had to get it out because I tried to tell TV, but he didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to talk about this series. But after I saw that series, that's all I could think about of, hey, you just camp the Vayne. Like you just make the Vayne irrelevant. You go get the grubs. You make it so that Vayne is now a champion that has to sit on their tower and catch waves.
I just wanted
And
to
now
be
she doesn't
known.
have a support.
I didn't ask Promech to say that. We didn't have any conversations about this ever at all. This is purely Promech's thoughts. VLN has no connection to what Promech is saying here. I couldn't even have thought of it myself, but I mean, that sounds wonderful. To sum it all up, I appreciate the people who have reached out to me, who had faith in me, or maybe they were attempting to just make me feel bad, who said we could have won this if I was in it. I didn't have confidence in myself, and I wasn't going to put myself in if I didn't have confidence in myself. I do think this was the best 5 that we could make, and I do think that it's still possible these 5 beat the shit out of Lacuna Matata. And that says something, because this is as strong as they get. And one more time, thank you all for letting me play with you guys in the rebrand season. I loved getting to make this content, be a part of it, shit talk, get shit talked. I adored this season. I hope you guys did too. We still have more to talk about in the video, but I'm out now. So I'm just a regular guy. And we go to what I don't think Glue Factory should be in the finals. Now that I'm not on a team, I don't got to pretend. I've been trying to support Luyten. Glue Factory scammed their way in there. That motherfucker below me on this screen is a piece of shit ADC, and he's 5'1", and STL gaps him, and he sucks, okay? Poro Pounders are going to clean him up in a 1-0. Like, they're going to beat him so bad, Glue Factory vote kicks Luyten off their team and FF the rest of the games. Just let it be known. This is for what you did earlier, by the way, Luyten. Okay? I tried to be a supporter. I told you I wanted to be. And what did you do? You poked the damn bear.
Unfortunate.
But how do y'all feel about who's going into winners finals? Serious conversation now. I'm sorry, I have to screw my mic back in.
I think it's earned. I think Glue Factory is a very strong team. I don't think the last series was good for Glue Factor or GT. I think they both looked weaker than their max, but I definitely think that Glue Factor is a team that's deserving to be in that winners final. I think Glue Factor is a very strong team. We played against them, and they're definitely a formidable opponent. I think GT is a bit overrated, but that's neither here nor there. So I think Glue Factor definitely deserves it, and I think Poro Panda is the best team in the league. I think they're just very good. I think they're beatable, but I think there are certain sort of strategies that you need to employ against Poro Pounders that teams just haven't been employing. But we'll see.
I agree with that. And also paid GF win because Levi has pneumonia, so he might not even be able to make it to winners finals.
There's no way. That'd be
crazy. So Luyten, how do you feel? How much money are you out?
Ooh, how much does it cost to give somebody pneumonia? I don't really know. So I'll have to check my bank account real quick and see the number.
But how are you feeling for real? I'll be serious now for the rest of the episode.
Honestly, I'm just excited. I think the matchup into PP is really interesting. Like roll to roll, we're not like there's definitely some differences. Like me versus different is very large. I think Naki is the better player, and I think the jungler Rambo is definitely going to be the better player from at least rank and initial standpoint. I don't even know who are playing jungle, honestly, so I can't say too much there. But I think it'll be a really fun series and the first best of 5 of the playoff of the tournament.
Yeah, did you hear that, Promech? Do you know what that? Do you know what that means? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay, just needed to make sure because you struggled earlier with it.
Yeah.
I do want to say one thing to Luyten. That is very that I think I'm just gonna leak some strats about Poro Pandas. Is that if you watch that one game against the first game against Noah Chrysalis, where Cho'Gath seems to be a problem, watch that game again. Watch how the Cho'Gath plays that game as the game goes on. So, like, I think that there are ways of exploiting it, and I think Drysicle is in a prime position to be able to beat up on Peter Griefer. I think Peter Griefer is probably a better player, but I think that Drysicle's playstyle is very good into Peter Griefer, but he has to be very, very cognizant of what Peter Griefer does when he's losing.
Yeah, I think Drysicle's gonna have to have a big series if we win, most likely.
Yeah,
and I think he does have a good matchup into it. like you said, he's good into the tank players, and that's all Peter Griefer can do, according to somebody I know. So
Yeah, that Peter Griefer guy sucks really bad. That guy has lost to VLN before.
Yeah.
That guy is.
Ooh.
That-
Man, if WoW can do it and VLN can do it, then like surely it's free.
I think if you put me on my set, I can't do this off my set, only on my set. I think you could shoot me 30 times with a 9mm and I would beat him before I bled out. But we can also now look at our lower bracket for some additional series, which we'll talk about these in a second. But these are going to be some of the best games in the whole tournament. I really believe that.
Yeah.
I think the SI versus AWB runback is a great pull one grudge match. I think GT versus Lacuna Matata, the team I have believed in since day one, get it back for me in blood, please. And then Nova Chrysalis versus Wizards of Wahoo. After how they played, I don't know. After Nova Chrysalis played in winner's bracket, I think it's 50-50.
Match that I'm watching the most. I think that's going to be a really interesting one.
VLN won't be here. Why am I speaking about myself in third person so strong? I won't be here this weekend. I'll be moving into my house. So Score should be streaming that. I'm going to force him to stream Nova Chrysalis versus Wizards of Wahoo. I do think it is the best match this weekend. No offense, Promech. But let's get into predictions.
Our game is 2 hours before theirs. What do you mean?
I want to get.
You can do both.
Oh, okay. Well, there is a chance that you might not be streamed. This live leak, due to some scheduling issues, Group Therapy and Lacuna Matata they have moved their game to your time slot as well. So both of you are playing in the same time slot. Given that this weekend was a 3 match and technically, 1/2 is whatever. But there's a chance we still stream SI versus AWB. Score gets to pick the first game, though. So go slip him a $50 bill. But let's talk about your bracket prediction, Promech, because, again, this guy right here does not know what a best of 5 is. We had to get him to make this 3 times, chat. 3 times before he got accurate series scores. And it being best of 5 affected his bracket prediction. So let's hear your analysis, Promech.
It did. So, okay. I think Glue Factory and Poor Panthers are very well matched. I think Tricycle has all the tools to win that matchup, top lane specifically. The bot lane matchup, I think Levi is really good, and it makes it very difficult. Although, if Nerv had told me that Levi wasn't showing up this weekend, I probably would have predicted it the other way around. But I think that Poor Panthers probably edges that one out, because I do think that Tricycle will fall into the trap that I'm worried that he's going to fall into. But again, just watch that game. Watch that first game and watch how they play with Peter Griefer. Just watch how that lane goes out, because Nerv had described that yesterday as, Peter Griefer just like dominated the laning phase. That just was not the case. It was a very different sort of reality of what was happening top lane. So I think that there's a chance for Glue Factory to edge out, but if I had to put money on it, I think Poro Panthers is the safer bet. Going down to SI with Atomic Whisper Brigade, we should win. Like the reality of the matter is that we've 2-0'd them twice. We should 2-0 them again. If we don't, then we are not as good as I'm predicting for the rest of the series. To be clear, I think Subtle Thing is very strong. I think Subtle Thing could easily sort of like upset us, because particularly Vampiric 6-foot Jack, if he locks in, if he's having one of those days where he has one of those days, like he could just 1v9, like he has that potential. I'm just not counting on it. I for some reason against us, that's not been the case, and we've played different lineups against them, and we've won every game. So I'm not super worried about that matchup. I think Group 30 is better than Lacuna Matata, but it wouldn't surprise me if Lacuna pulls that out somehow. But I would be very surprised if that was the case. Like, I think Group Therapy is a better team than them. And then Nova Chrysalis against Wizards of Wahoo, that's another one that could go either way. I think Nova is better. I think they're one of the better teams in the league if they have their house in order. But WoW is a very sneaky, strong team, and I think that they can upset pretty much anyone. I think WoW could beat PP like on a given day. Like, I think we saw that earlier on in the playoffs, that they could edge out victories there. Then I have us against GF. I think we beat Glue Factory. I don't know. I think this could go either way as
It's
well.
because
The
Luton's on
factory
that
could be
team.
better.
Just say it. It's because
But
Luton's on that team.
no, it's not Luyten. I think I figured out the tricycle. I think I have a winning mindset into the
That
tricycle
guy
now.
lives
I think I
rent
have
free in your head,
a
Promech.
strategy. I think that Tricycle's playstyle is counter to my playstyle, but I don't necessarily think that Tricycle is a better player than me. That's what I'm gonna say. All right. And no hate on him or anything. That's what I think. So I think that we'll be able to win that out. Group therapy against Nova Chrysalis. I think Nova is one of the better teams. I think they beat group therapy, assuming that their house is in order. And then I think we beat Nova Chrysalis. That's just I think that if we get to the point where we've won 2 games in a row against SI and against GF, I think we'll be rolling and comfortable enough to where we can actually just go all the way and win the whole series. I think that momentum will be a big factor. But if it's because the best of 5, I think the finals that PP will beat us. I think a lot of stuff has to align for us to beat them, and I think momentum will help. Like I think we'll be in a good spot. But if I had to put money on it again, I will vote for Panthers.
That's crazy, Promech. To give your team the God run and then say you get your shit kicked in, bro. That's crazy.
No, that's not necessarily what I'm saying, but I think that I think if it was a best of 3, we could beat them. I'm pretty confident in that. But in a best of 5, Levi and Different are so good bot lane that it's really, really difficult for me to see us. Like, Alun might have an off game. He's not going to have 3 off games, right? But Alun having a good game does not mean that Different doesn't also have a good game. Like, I think it's very hard for us to shut down their bot lane. Whereas I think it's easier to shut us down our bot lane just naturally. I just think it'll happen one of the games, and it's going to be whether or not we can carry a loon. We've done it before. We can do it again, but it's a risk. And so I think PP is a safer bet there. But we can definitely win. I have faith in my team.
I'll say this live and on public record. If this series gets to fruition, which admittedly, Promech, I don't think it would. But if this happens, I do think you beat the shit out of Peter Grifford top lane, Promech. I think you put that motherfucker in a tomb that they will write ballads about for the rest of time. And I have faith in you in that. This is the second worst bracket prediction that we have, though, openly, after Hameas. It's crazy to give yourself the God run. Talk about how winning after winning builds your momentum so you can smash over Chrysalis. And then on a 3-week win streak, be like, but then PP just beats the shit out of us.
No, it's a best of 5, bro. Anything can happen, but I gotta be safe. I gotta be fair. I also can't be like super biased. Like I know it looks biased, but I genuinely believe that AWB can, with particularly our lineup that we're running now, I think we're as good as any other team in the league. But I think PP have played together longer, and I think it's a little harder to predict the win there than any of the other series.
100%. Well, then we move on. Oh, hold on. I got to click back in.
He kind of copied that one EVAPS win on with what's it called? What was the team with Namin?
Your team with Namin?
Giggling Ghosts.
Yeah.
He's pretty much copied that where you run the lower bracket and then you get absolutely stomped.
Yeah,
it's final.
I don't. It's okay. I also didn't see this as split screen before, but yeah, EVAPS does crazy things with his prediction. So this is now for Luyten and I to take ownership of our victories and our losses. My bracket is not stacking up. I'm going to speak very briefly on it, and then make a quick edit on what I imagine will happen. I unironically believe Glue Factory won on Fraud Watch. I think they're a ridiculously strong team. I think that they could have won, but I think the nature of how they won, I don't think it counts group therapy out, in my opinion. And I do think that when you fall to lower bracket, Glue Factory is more susceptible to losing to the lower bracket teams than group therapy is. Just want that on my... And notice I said when you fall to loser's bracket, because I know it's going to happen. But aside from that, I still stand by most of this, except now I guess it's going to be GT versus PP in the end. And I think that in a lot of ways, GT versus PP is like effectively the same team playing against each other, except PP is just better than GT in pretty much every role. But I do think Kessler can exploit the unexploitable Giraffe Rider. And despite them being the same rank, I do think Zhao Long is better than Rambo Jungle than Peter Griefer is than CC Swift Top. And so I would just revise it to GTPP end, and I would say it's a 3-2 for GT. That would be how I edit my tournament pulling out. And then Luyten, he made this segment to gloat, by the way. I called him out for it when we made the DMs for this. He wanted this in this week to gloat about his perfect record. So go ahead, Luyten. We're all listening.
I missed 2 check marks. Bummer. But
yeah, but that's because of scheduling.
Oh no!
It's a Luyten mistake.
I didn't do the winner bracket round 2. It's not that crazy because if you look at yours and compare it to mine, the only difference is we believed in our teams, pretty much. Oh, and you believed in NS a little more. That's it. So is that really that crazy of a difference? I don't think so. We pretty much guessed a lot of the similar, except for I think the forbidden, non-existent matches. I don't know if we disagreed there. And I'm curious on your opinion for SI AWB since we did fuck that. I fucked that up.
That's also on me. I actually publicly won it. Said genuinely, it's not. I should have verified it as well.
Yeah.
Hamea also should have verified it as well. So we split it 3 ways.
True. Yeah, that guy's stupid. He doesn't even know which series is a best of 5. He can't read.
My genuine take is that it's hard to tell. Based purely off what's in my bones, I actually do think AWB 2-0's SI, because I do think that the roster they're running now with Woof Woof stepping out is like heads and shoulders stronger than where they were before. But SI has also just been surprising. Like that is their whole thing, is that you don't know when they are going to do crazy and when they are going to do poorly. And I would say it's less so on AWB to win the series than it is for SI to just coin flip whether or not they play crazy or they play poorly.
I think that, plus I feel like AWB has more momentum as well, which is weird. I mean, they only played 1 game, I guess, so they got less momentum inherently from that alone. But I think coming off of a loss and then winning it as well as they did is kind of big for a team, especially after an adjustment.
Yeah, but I don't like Glaze and Promech.
Oh yeah,
get used to it, but
okay, big talk. Okay, and then for the same thing, I want to hear your opinion about what is the new one? GT versus Lacuna Matata. Also, just real quick, Summon Admins being eliminated is the biggest surprise in my opinion out of everything so far.
It was the only upset. Every other match has been the higher seed one.
Yeah, that's crazy. But
so our seeding worked, I guess.
Yeah, but hey, we're goated tournament hosts. I got maybe the best to ever do it. But maybe. GT versus Lacuna Matata. You heard what I said earlier about what I want to happen.
I think GT 2-0. So I'll stand by my bracket on that one.
Yeah, those guys are fraud watch.
Unless Kessler falls asleep again, that would be a shame.
I even think with Adamax.
No, even without, honestly, Adamax played pretty well. I think they could. I think especially considering the matchup, they would be fine that way.
I do want to say that Lacuna Matata are my boys. I do like the people as people on that team. I have nothing against them as individuals, but I do hope that they lose horrifically in the next bracket of the tournament. But that takes us to the end of GCF, running the gauntlet for GCS playoffs week 2. Thank you guys so much for doing this one. I actually had a ton of fun this episode. It was more fun than normal. So thank you guys.
You're welcome.
Promech, you got anything you want to say to the people who might be listening?
No, just thank you for the support, and then shout out to my entire team. It's been one of the better teams that I've been a part of, not just performance-wise, but in terms of vibes. A lot of Goku is really, really cool. He's a very good energy to have on the team. June is June. She's awesome.Aloon is a little difficult at times, but he's very, you can tell he wants to win, and he's constantly trying to get us in that direction. So I appreciate that specifically because it gives us real hope that if our best player feels that, hey, there's an avenue for victory, it really makes you want to work hard for it. So I like my team. I think has done a very very good job at sort of keeping that good vibe going, and then adjusting where necessary.
And that's, again, you speak so sweetly about your team that it's genuinely
Wouldn't have expected it.
yeah, I genuinely wouldn't have either. So I'm glad Luyten said it. Luyten, you got anything you want to say to the people?
I hope nobody gets evicted this week.
Yeah, I do too. It is, well, I mean, I'm kind of getting evicted. I'm getting evicted by my own will. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you're eliminated already. It doesn't affect.
Okay, well,
Oh,
you know, what is up with this? I switched to trying to be nice to people, and then they keep being mean to me. I don't get it. Real quick, some things I want to shout out for those of you who actually listen all the way to the end here. Be ready for TV's Pick'ems for week 3. I want you guys to engage with that. We are actually trying to find an award for the person who has the most points by the end of it. Also, keep in mind, if you do the Pick'ems after the week's results are out, we get a little date and timestamp on when you submitted the form. We know that you did that. You're not tricking us, okay? But yeah.
You gotta appreciate the effort.
Yeah, TV's doing, which you're saying about the cheater, but I appreciate TV's effort. He's doing a lot of work. He makes them fun. So go be a part of that. Other things to look out for. I will be out this weekend for moving, like I said. So any questions, comments, concerns you have related to the tournament, send to this guy right down here. He will be subbing in for VLN for a weekend. I hope I don't come back to, you know the gif, Donald Glover walking into the room on fire.
Burn it all down.
Yeah. And then
We already had that this year.
Yeah, true. Last but not least, I will be doing, mark your calendars, chat, a 24-hour fundraising live stream for GCS Season 2 next weekend. I'll do it because I'll stream one of the games and we'll go from the stream onward and we'll end with the next stream. Probably looking like April 29th. We're trying to group crowdfund the extra $1,000 that we want to pay Lacuna for the work that we're doing. We have a long list of goals that we are working on. I'm going to give you 2 just to showcase it. At $100 given, I will shave my head bald live on stream because enough people wanted that from the 07 bet that I will be to the skin bald. And if this is a big if, we get to the full $1,000 paid out in the 24-hour live stream, Gilly and I have shaken hands. We have made this deal, commitment together, to get shirtless, oiled up with baby oil, and wrestle in the backyard of my new house live on stream. So if that's something you would be interested in seeing, 1, come to the 24-hour live stream, but 2, go look at twitch.tv/verylastnerve because I will have to stream on my personal Twitch channel in fear that wrestling match might get us banned. Okay, so that is just something to be on the lookout for. Like I've said, I've loved this season. I've loved it in spite of its problems and in spite of the DMs and the hate that I've gotten for things that have happened or the issues that we've faced. You all, and I'm pointing at the camera, and I am including these 2 chuckle fucks from me, have made this the most rewarding season I've ever been a part of. And it was a genuine, real honor to not only have played in it, but have gotten this far. Yeah. Thank you guys. Have a good week, and I hope you do well. Goodbye.